Okay, there we go. It's being live streamed. Looks like we're live. For people watching the recording, hang on for a minute while we do some sharing of links, and then we'll get this started. All right. Okay, I got the YouTube link. I'm going to put that in the Telegram channel. There we go. Okay, welcome everybody to the Permissionless Software Foundation Technical Steering Meeting. Today is June 22nd, 2022. I am Chris Troutner. I helped found the PSF, and let's go around and do a quick round of introductions. Aaron Shoemaker, why don't you start us off?
My name is Aaron Shoemaker. I deal with metaverse, VR, NFT stuff. Just got a full cache node up and running yesterday. And working on going through Chris's software, and as Stoyan says, breaking it. So every week on Roots Up. So you can check us out as we fumble our way through. Stoyan is much better than me. You know, I'm the fumbler.
Yeah, I've really been enjoying watching you guys on Roots Up. Go ahead, Cool Cleaner.
Hello, Aaron Sudman here. Big fan of the Permissionless Software Foundation for quite some time. I'm also a big believer in the idea that the idea of permission or of property rights will be changing and associated more with NFTs and with blockchain, rather than this sort of loose relationship we have to property ownership, especially for intangibles going forward. So not only is permissionless software doing things that make it easy for people to take part in the space without permission, also making it easier to be able to create these NFTs and move forward with this idea of property rights going forward. So big fan, I'm here.
Yeah, cheers. Well, we're going to talk about NFTs and how they express property rights during the roundtable. I'm excited for that discussion. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Stoyan.
My name is Stoyan Zhekov, and I'm helping from time to time with the JavaScript libraries for the PSF Foundation. That's all from me.
And you're doing a great job, like poking at bugs and helping me find them. All right. Well, with that, I'm going to share my screen and share the agenda. Let me blow this up. So as always, we post our agenda on GitHub under the Permissionless Software Foundation GitHub group under a repository called TSC for Technical Steering Committee. And then we date them. So today's, oh, wait a minute. Is this today's agenda? Buy now button. Yeah. Okay. I got the wrong date on here. Let me change that. Today is the 22nd. Here we go. Okay, so there's some links here. We have a YouTube channel. This is being recorded. It'll be available there. If you're watching it, you're probably aware of that. We've got a Telegram channel where we announce these meetings. The scope of these meetings is to discuss the software that the Permissionless Software Foundation maintains. There's a short list here. There's even more information on cachestack.info, as well as our psfoundation.cache and .info websites. So today I'm going to kick us off with an update on the token DEX. So Ava Labs gave us a grant back in October to take our proof of concept DEX, which is based on the Vinarmani swap protocol, and port it over to the Avalanche X chain. I just confirmed that we've been working on it. We have like all the pieces working, and now the only parts left to do is put all those pieces together into like one sort of coherent experience. And so I just reached out to them and confirmed that the, with all this financial volatility, that like they're still going to honor the other half of the grant. And so I'm hoping to wrap everything up in the next 6 weeks and get a demo site and a demo video and a report out for them and just wrap that whole project up. So that's going to be my main focus for the next 6 weeks, is just working on the Avalanche side of things. But as a part of this, I'm going to be making changes to the pay to write database and the Gatsby theme that we use for the web wallet. So a lot of those funds are going to go towards, improvements of those, which is great because that software transcends blockchains. It transcends all three blockchains that we tend to focus on.
Chris, what will be the preferred wallet to use with this DEX? Will it be like fullstack.cash one or command line one?
What is so there's wallet.avex.network. So this is their official web wallet.
So we will use their wallet.
Well, this will be a fallback. So if something goes wrong with the software we're building, you can always take your mnemonic phrase and fall back to this. But I'm actually going to be forking the Gatsby theme that is at wallet.fullstack.cash, and it'll be a multi coin wallet because you'll have to have some Bitcoin Cash and some PSF tokens in order to write to the pay to write database. But then other than that, it'll be an Avalanche wallet. So it'll have Avalanche and tokens. So there will be a AVEX tokens and BCH tokens, menu. And so it'll do both blockchains.
Well, what about the command line? Before there was something like AVEX, some command line wallet.
Yeah, we have, I think it's AVEX Cli wallet. And I think we actually have PSF AVEX wallet. I need to check, but yeah, we've been trying to keep the commands the same. So the user experience is the same, even though you're using a different blockchain, because that's ultimately where we prototype everything before we make the effort to push it up to a graphical user interface. Good question, Stoyan. So yeah, that'll all be getting updated. That'll all be part of this final push. Okay, so that's the DEX. That's where we're at with that. Tech updates. So we have this meeting every 2 weeks. So this is kind of a chance to just celebrate some of the technical achievements. And as always, guys, interrupt me if you have any questions or comments. Thank you, Stoyan, for doing that. So the token liquidity app, which is responsible for creating perfect liquidity between Bitcoin Cash and the PSF token, that was having some issues with basically trying to talk to the fullstack.cash with the JOP token and the rate limits. And it just needed to be, there wasn't actually anything wrong. It just, the order of operations were kind of messed up. So that got reconfigured or refactored pretty heavily. I took this opportunity to do a pretty serious refactor of it and got to work with minimal SLP wallet library rather than talking to BCH.js directly. And I'm excited about this because what I'm envisioning is like these Lego blocks where the DEX is like the foundational protocol, and then the token liquidity app would be like an add-on to the DEX that would so the token liquidity app is an automated market maker. So its job is just to try and keep on a mathematical curve the exchange rate of PSF tokens to BCH. And so instead of interacting with the token liquidity app directly like you do today, you'd interact with it through the DEX, which is a protocol, not a website that you go to. And then I'll talk about it in the discussion. We're going to talk about the buy now button, but that's another component that would let you essentially buy a token immediately through a web page. And it would leverage this BCH DEX protocol. So it would still be a decentralized protocol on the back end. So I'm hoping to tie all these pieces together so that eventually you'd go to psfoundation.cash and you'd essentially buy now, send some money to a Bitcoin Cash address, and then from there the purchase of PSF tokens would essentially be foolproof, or like you couldn't get into a situation where you send your money and you don't get tokens back. You'll either still have your money or you'll have the tokens. Like you can't. That's the advantage of the DEX is it's atomic, so there's no intermediate step where you can get stuck. And so that's what I'm hoping to get to.
Wow, that's exciting to see that work. I mean, this is one of those things where yeah, moving from something that's a centralized thing that feels like there's a way to get stuck in the middle to have something being atomic, that does add a lot of trust in the system. So thanks.
Yeah. Trying to really, it's like this, that's the problem with the DEX right now, is the swap protocol is cool, but it's just a big ask to get people to interact with it. And so, yeah, I'm trying to make we're going to go more into depth here on the buy now button, but I think that's really going to lower the barrier of entry to get consumers to actually buy tokens.
Yeah, I mean, one of the reasons that I'm setting up a node, I did set up a node here, is because I see with what you're building with this, a lot of economic opportunity for small businesses, medium-sized businesses to create tokens, sell tokens on the DEX, utilize them for transactions. And having a node here means that they're going to get faster transactions because it doesn't have to go outside the city for them to do that sort of thing. So that's part of where we want things to be fast as possible for people, so that they feel like there is no waiting, there is no nothing that could hinder them from making a change to this way of doing things.
Yeah. Freedom of transaction.
Yeah.
Okay, so IPFS service provider, I just got that up to 100% unit test coverage. And that's a big deal because it's a hard thing to achieve, particularly if you don't start at 100% and maintain 100%. It's really that hard to get back to 100%. So I'm really glad I was able to do that. And it's important because IPFS service provider, that's the main repository main code that you run to set up a circuit relay, which is at the core of our censorship resistance network. So it's important for that reason. But then that code base gets forked into several other projects like the pay to write database, BCH Wallet Consumer, and BCH Wallet Service. Those are all forks of IPFS service provider. So they all benefit from that 100% test coverage. So now that I've got the sort of parent repository at 100%, I can pull those changes into these child repositories and start trying to get them up to 100%. And being at 100%, I used to really poo-poo this idea of 100% unit test coverage. I used to think it was like a waste of time to try to achieve it, because in order to get there, you have to write a lot of just sort of silly unit tests that don't really do anything other than increase the percentage. And that's the thing that I had a problem with. I didn't see a point in that. But McKeel Rogers, who was very influential in the Node.js project in its early days, he's really changed my thinking on this. And that when you're trying to collaborate with other people on the internet that you don't know and don't necessarily trust, having 100% test coverage is great because it gives you much less management overhead cost when accepting contributions, because if they lower the test coverage, you can just say, no, you really got to include test coverage because we're trying to maintain 100%. And then if it does, you at least know that tests are written and that nothing else that existed before that submission has broken, because none of those tests have changed. So it just makes code reviews like much less risky, and acceptance of code much less risky. You still need to do a code review, and you still need to make sure that there's no like malicious code in there. That's a given. But basically, if you started at 100 and you end at 100, then like you have a high degree of confidence that nothing's broken. And if it has broken, there's a test for it. That means the test is broken as well. And so you can, you have a much better place to start from to fix a problem like that. So that's why 100% test coverage is really handy. And it's particularly in the case of open source, open collaboration development. It's probably not as valuable in a company that has like a QA department, and like we don't have those advantages as an open source company. Like we just don't have, we don't have those resources. So this is one way of this is basically a trade-off that open source projects have to make. So pretty happy.
Yeah, that makes sense. Wow, that's a great way to think of it. It feels like busy work when it's just yourself, but once you have to bring in other people, it really does make sense. Wow, I'm glad you explained that.
Yeah. Cheers. Okay, and so we had I completed a bounty from Aaron, Cool Cleaner, Aaron Sunman. Let me just open this up real quick so we can enjoy this. Aaron paid for several commands to be added to the command line wallet, PSF BCH wallet. So it now has commands for creating fungible tokens, creating group tokens, and creating NFT tokens, and then minting additional fungible tokens and group tokens. So for people who are not familiar with what Aaron Sunman's working on, he's more of a PHP programmer, and he uses the command line app instead of it like an API. Instead of having to, learn a bunch of advanced JavaScript, he can play to his strengths and simply issue command line instructions. And so I just think that is an awesome way to go. And so he needed these commands for what he's trying to do with his business. And so this is a perfect example of the kind of synergy that I want to see this organization increase is, independent entrepreneurs doing their own thing with their own needs are using our tools and see a clear need for something that benefits them and the community, and just pays for that small incremental improvement that helps them and everybody else. And this is the kind of like circular economic system that I want to see. So thank you, Aaron.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the things that you did that I completely didn't expect, well, I expected everything to work, and it does, because I've run every one of these, and I end up doing a PHP shell exec. So I have a separate server that I create APIs out of that call this. But the other ability to have, and this is highlighted in your most recent video, or not most recent, second most recent video, is the ability to use the Web3 or Web2 infrastructure and why to use each one. So if you haven't really thought about, watch that video where he talks about the Web2 infrastructure, the Web3 infrastructure, some of the delays that are caused in there, or why you should stand up your own cash strap. And it's really apparent in that video. So thanks for doing that as well, because I didn't expect that, and that's a big add.
Cool. Well, that's a good segue to the next. Oh, go ahead, Stoyan.
I think we have found a small missing piece in this command. It's about when you create a token, in the moment the button always is attached to the token. You cannot create a limited supply token. You cannot create a token with not attaching the button.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, you could do it by going into the code and doing it, but it's not a command line flag.
Well, yeah, I'm glad you guys brought that up, because there is actually a way, and let me see if I can remember it real quick.
Okay. And did you see my QR codes? Do you think
I saw the video? Did you submit a PR?
No, I wanted to ask you today, is it like useful change or?
Yeah. That was definitely a feature that was in the other Cly wallet.
That's why.
Yeah. Please submit
it was in the Cly wallet.
I watched you demo it in the Roots Up video, and yeah, I was like, hell yeah, this is great.
Yeah. Okay, I will submit then pull request.
Oh, well, there you go. Oh, because I'm doing a weird command. So how do you do this?
I don't think it's possible. I look on the code.
No. So right here, if you pass in -r and you pass in null, so no receiver. So receiver would be the address that you send the minting baton to at the end of the minting. So if you don't pass it -r, it'll just go back to the same wallet. If you pass it -r, this is how you send the minting baton to another address.
Like a multi-sig.
But I don't think, no, this one will leave the baton in the address which created the token, but there will be always a baton. So you can create new tokens as much as you want.
Okay.
But I was talking, when you create the token, you can do not attach the baton to the creating the token. So it will be never be
when you
more,
create the token.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it will be limited supply. There cannot be ever more tokens. From the initial supply.
So I think what I was thinking is that you would create a token and then a second command to burn the minting baton.
Okay.
rather than doing it all in one
Yeah.
command.
If it's possible, yeah, okay. But I was thinking all of the tokens
Yeah,
will
you're-
become like Dogecoin. You
Yeah.
can create as much as you want. So
Maybe
Okay,
Elon
here,
would be
if
interested
if a
then.
baton address is not specified, then the baton is burned and makes it a fixed supply token.
okay. Yeah, this will be good.
If
Okay.
a baton, so yeah, if you just okay, I'll have to check. You know, this is what the instructions say. Now we need to actually see if the instructions are right. But that's how it's supposed to work.
Yeah, I don't think it's working, but
Okay,
but
yeah, I'll have to check.
we can check.
Yeah, this is the
Okay.
beauty of software; it's iterative.
Yeah.
But the video that Aaron Sunman was talking about is a good segue. I just added those to the video page. So if you go to psfoundation.cash, our homepage /video, or go to the menu and navigate to the video section, right here under beginner JavaScript, I added these recent videos. Sorry, I'm kind of messing with my screen here because Zoom's in the way. But part 1, part 2, part 3 shows how to set up PSF BCH wallet, this command line wallet, which is what we were just talking about. It has these new commands for creating tokens. And so part 1's very simple. Just here's how you install it, send and receive BCH and tokens. Part 2 is a little bit more advanced configuration, pointing it at Web 2 versus Web 3 infrastructure and sort of what the differences are. And then the third one is like advanced configuration, where you can actually run your own local backend, and which provides a REST API to the wallet. And if you're a JavaScript developer, particularly a front end JavaScript developer, that local backend is like the only backend stuff you need to learn. And then everything else you can build web apps and stuff like that. Which actually reminds me, I didn't put I'll get to that in a minute, but yeah, anyway, so those videos are up on the videos page, and I encourage people to check them out, watch them, give us feedback, let me know if there's anything that's confusing in there. One thing that I did not add to this was that new web app boilerplate. I'll give this a minute to come up. No, not that one.
By the way, I made this consumer to work on my Mac. It was the Docker part, it was pretty easy. I just needed to correct something in the config file because of the IP addresses. You know, like hard coded there, the Linux Docker IP address, 172 something. But yeah, I corrected something there and it's running beautifully on my Mac.
Nice.
So you can add it to the supported OSs, maybe.
Yeah, I wonder, because that's the thing. I'm sure there is a slight difference between Mac and Linux when it comes to Docker networking, and that's clearly what you found and solved. So if there's some way to document what that is, it'd be great just to have it like a gist or something that we can refer people to, because everybody who tries to run the software on a Mac is going to hit this problem.
Yeah, and on the Windows side, I just got to go into the shell script and rewrite it for PowerShell.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's all pretty much the same commands. It's just you input them separate from PowerShell, and that's why it wasn't running on my Windows machine. So I just need to go through and rewrite it. The export commands.
Well, there you go. You guys will get to experience what I experience every day, which is when I don't have an easy piece of documentation to refer to. That means I am the documentation, and everybody gets to come to me and ask me. So anybody with a PowerShell who wants to get the software, go talk to Aaron Shoemaker, and anybody with a Mac, talk to Stoyan.
Well, what I'll do is I'll put together a PowerShell script, and then maybe I can just load it up to my GitHub. So if you want to run it on Windows, you can just go to I think I already forked the repository, but you can just go to my fork and then get the PowerShell script.
Nice.
So
yeah, I didn't have this on the agenda, but it should have been. I think I called it a boilerplate template. Let's see. Yeah, Gatsby IPFS template. So this is a new repository And there is a live demo up on, oh, that's not, this isn't it. This isn't what I was looking for. Maybe I called it boilerplate. No, I didn't call it that either. Web app sign message. Oh, this is okay. React Bootstrap Web3 single page app. This is the new boilerplate that I wanted to show you guys. So this is my NFT page, and it's showing the one NFT that I've created. But I took that work and I forked it into a boilerplate, and then compiled it and up. So what you'll see here. So this is a React app. And it's using a library called React Bootstrap. And Bootstrap is, it's been around for a while. It's like a layout system, so that if you want to create an app really quickly and you want it to look pretty and you want it to look good on smartphones and all these different screen sizes, you can just, it's like it's not really a template, because it's not like it's not opinionated like a template is. It's just like, here's a button and it's got all the pretty formatting, and here's a form and it's got all the pretty formatting, and here's all the basic Lego blocks you need to build a pretty web app. And so, like, if I resize this, it'll automatically resize to like a phone.
Twitter. It's a Twitter project.
Yes.
You can connect element HTML element classes like button something to CSS. So you just put the name of some class, and it will automatically put some style for you.
Yeah,
so
yeah. So it's primarily HTML and CSS and like very little JavaScript. And then someone forked that project and added it and took all those and turned them into React components. And so if you're used to developing a React app, it's really easy to build. Just throw all these Lego blocks in there and build things really fast.
I looked, but it's the old style of React with a component did mount and stuff like this one. And now all of this is replaced with hooks. So we need maybe to make a little changes.
Yeah. I know. I had to learn how to use React hooks in this, and so it's not that hard. I stumbled a couple times, but you get it once you understand like a few basic ideas. I didn't even have to really read much documentation on it. Like you start playing with it, and it either works or it doesn't. And when it doesn't work, you just kind of Google a couple things like the error message, and it's pretty fast to figure it out. But basically, this is intended to be like a boilerplate or a template that people can fork and start from. And it's got all the basic things where, when you load the page, it throws up this waiting spinner, and that was pretty fast. But what it's doing is it's loading the minimal SLP wallet, which is like an external dependency, which includes BCH.js. And then it initializes the wallet. So that's where you can either connect it to a Web 2 or a Web 3 that you sort of tell it what backend you want it to talk to. But then also as part of this template, there's this dropdown that gets automatically populated from a gist. So when we activate the bounties and we have more backends being paid through the bounties, they'll automatically get populated in this list. And so if if the default is down, you just click on this and select an alternative backend to use, and then it'll reload the page and talk to that backend. And so this is just a very simple app to check the balance of a Bitcoin Cash address. And but it has, you have everything here. You can get token data. You can create tokens. You can create, it automatically creates a wallet on startup, so you can send, receive Bitcoin Cash and tokens.
Awesome.
So yeah, like this is, and it leverages this whole Web3 backend. So you don't really need to think about the backend. You don't need to pay for the backend. It's more consumer driven, where and it's loaded on IPFS. So the actual front end can't be censored. And then you have all these redundant backends. So that's very difficult to censor. So we actually have a true blockchain based app that is like pretty damn censorship resistant.
That's fantastic. Fantastic.
Okay, well, so that's pretty much the agenda. And so now I'd like to open it up to a roundtable discussion. So there's a couple things One is the buy now button. I want to share some thoughts with you guys on that. And then I also want to kick around some ideas that I've had recently on this ongoing theme of like, how do we take Craigslist as a model and turn that from a platform into a protocol? So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing. But so real quick on the buy now button, what we have now with BCH Decks is we have these Docker containers, and you can load them on a desktop or you can load them on a Raspberry Pi, and that gets you access to the decks. You can buy and sell tokens. And there's because you're running it locally on your own computer, there's no like platform that can deplatform you or censor you or prevent you from trading. And there's no KYC needed because it's peer-to-peer between you and the other person. And but that actual like loading the software is a high ask, way more than a normal consumer. It can be expected for a normal consumer. So the problem is, how do we take what we have and get to like a very simple one-click buy now button? And I think the way to do that is that we can build a very small, lightweight REST API that essentially handles the DEX communication, which is just a protocol. And so if I wanted to, let's use the example of my NFT site. So what I would want right here is a buy now button. And so what I could run, because this is my store and my NFT, I could run a backend REST API server for my site. That's pretty normal in terms of how the web works these days. And so the buy now button would make a REST API call to this new REST API that I'm talking about. And it would pop up a modal with a Bitcoin Cash address and say, okay, here's how much you need to pay, and send it to this address. And that would be generated by the REST API. And so the REST API would monitor that address and wait for a payment to land. And when a payment lands, it would then negotiate this atomic swap for the token. And the trick there is that there's three parts to a trade. There's the offer, the counter offer, and the acceptance. And so when you hit the buy now button, what you're doing is you're generating a counter offer. And it depends on the seller being online to like see that signal and complete the acceptance phase and broadcast the transaction, which makes the trade final. And so if they're not online, that won't happen right away. And so what this REST API would do is like just sit there. When it sees the payment, it would make the counter offer, and then it would wait for like 10 or 15 minutes. And if the acceptance transaction does not go through, it would just send the money back to the originating address. So you're getting the convenience of a buy now button, and the trade-off is that you're trusting that new REST API. And so if it's my store and it's my website and it's my REST API, I'm asking you to trust me. and so I think it's an acceptable trade-off in terms of trust, because the trust is it's sort of like a local context. Like if you go to another store, you're relying on those people. And so I think ultimately that's what it comes down to, is it's like, if you want more convenience, you have to make a trade-off that involves trust. I don't really see another way to do it. But anyways, do you guys have any thoughts on that? Does that sound like a reasonable trade-off?
So go ahead, Aaron.
I was just going to say, I think that does make sense. And I think that there has to be, for people that don't want to run their own infrastructure, they have to trust somebody somewhere along the line. The one question I have is with regard to, an SLP wallet. What if they're sending it from that one that does not respect SLPs and might burn the token they get back, and they don't know the difference, right? And since Bitcoin.com just recently shut down SLP, that'd be something to at least make sure that you alert them to that. That's the only thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Good point.
Go ahead, Shoemaker. Sorry.
So I was trying to kind of comprehend exactly, like, go over what you're saying again. So essentially, if somebody's going to buy and there's not somebody there to sell, they get their money back. is what you're saying.
Yeah. Within 15 minutes, you get your money back, or you get the token.
Well, that's part of why I set up a node here, and what we're hoping to do with the cluster network is work hand in hand with this sort of thing. Cluster network being a data layer, geolocated, and then hopefully we can get more nodes set up around. And our goal is to utilize the cluster network to for simple things like selling a business a website. So instead of doing hosting on AWS or Oracle and paying that monthly cost, your monthly cost is stick this Raspberry Pi in your closet, and now it's another node on the cluster, and what say that's, I can see the same stuff with like the cash stack infrastructure, where we could break down stuff and say, well, if you're going to process stuff, maybe you need a BCH wallet consumer on site, and then I've got my node running here at my house. Eventually we might have several in town, but the idea is that as we're working with these businesses, these farmers markets and stuff like that, we're providing small little edge devices that communicate and store data and can communicate to the blockchain to make things very fast for people, so that it's not just people like, this is great to have this kicked back, but I'd rather have a machine that's set up ready to go, and keep it running like that.
Chris, why you need these tools like REST API? I remembered one of the standard examples in the cache script repository was for escrow. So exactly things that you are describing. So it will be some address. If you send their money, they will be locked for some period and sent back to you, or when you send tokens, something. I think it was one of the standard examples in their repository. So this can be implemented directly in the cache script. So you will not need the REST.
No, that's a really good point, and I wanted to bring that up in the next when we're talking about Craigslist, because I think that's way more applicable. Maybe there is, and maybe I'm just not seeing it yet, but I don't think there's a really good way to tie in the cache script escrow contract to the swap protocol. It's really difficult for scripts to handle SLP tokens. They really only work on the level of Bitcoin Cash, but I mean, that could be, I've thought about that escrow. Well, so let's talk about a situation where the escrow would work, which is like a Craigslist situation. Like, I don't know how many of you guys used local.bitcoin.com. They're the ones that really, I think, did this escrow contract. It was used in OpenBazaar, but it was pretty clunky. And then bitcoin.com did it on local.bitcoin.com, which is not up anymore. And I thought that execution was nearly flawless. In both situations, when you're talking about an escrow, you need a third party. You need an escrow agent. You need that's the whole point, is you need some third party that's objective and unbiased to, when there is a conflict, to make a decision and decide who gets the money. And so in the example of Craigslist, I think that would be great. Where you could put down earnest money, or even the full thing, like some widget that's being sold on Craigslist. And that's how local.bitcoin.com worked, where they were the escrow agent. And then on OpenBazaar, which made it really easy. You didn't have to that's the only way it works. And so it's just the buyer and seller working stuff out. In OpenBazaar, they had a marketplace for escrow agents. So when you went to buy something, the seller would give you a list of 3 to 5 escrow people on the network who that's their whole job, is just to do escrow. And in both cases, the escrow agent isn't even involved unless there's a conflict, but they do make a commission on the sale, typically 1%, just for providing the service, even if the service is not needed. And so it's really a useful piece of technology. And I think in a situation like Craigslist, it would apply very well. In this case, I mean, what I'm thinking of in terms of use case for this buy now button, I'm thinking of artists selling their NFTs. and so it's really like more like fans supporting a creator. So there's not really an obvious need for escrow in that situation. And if you did incorporate it, I think it would be a little clunky. But I don't know. What do you guys think? Like, I'm definitely willing to be convinced of other things.
Well, I mean, in this situation, I could see if I was buying Chris Trout token, I would think it'd be between you and I. I really wouldn't want another person. If I went to like you said, if I went to a Craigslist and there's 1,000 other people, I wouldn't, I would feel like I would want it. I agree with that concept. And so I feel like it's between you and I, and if you screwed me, then I would go, okay, what's going on, Chris? How come I didn't get my money back? Right?
Yeah, it would just be between you and me the whole time.
Right.
And then another thing I didn't mention was this sort of intermediary REST API that I described. Like that is basically Shopify. So if this took off as like a thing, I could see people offering a use case similar to like Shopify, which is like, yeah, we've got this template. You don't need to know anything. You just drop in your NFTs and or we'll help you turn your artwork into NFTs. We'll list them for sale with the buy now button and da 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 da. But the point is that ultimately, one step back, you're back to a blockchain based protocol that's trustless and atomic, and that's the thing that makes it different than Shopify today. Is right now the buck stops with Shopify, and if it doesn't, it stops with PayPal and or whatever payment processors downstream from them. Whereas in this new scenario, you have to have one step of trust, and then from there on, it's trustless. So, but I like the thought of the escrow, Stoyan. Let's keep thinking about that and thinking about where it applies and doesn't apply, because I do love that escrow script. I think that there is a lot of value in that. Well, and actually, that might be a good segue. So the other thing I wanted to discuss was this idea of Craigslist. So I've really spent like some time this week thinking about how to approach that whole idea of turning Craigslist from a platform into a protocol. And what I was thinking is, what if we represented a store as an NFT, like a store selling things on Craigslist? If stores were NFTs, it would be pretty easy to index them and look up all the stores on the network, because there might be one other piece of metadata, like maybe the ticker has to have like 3 characters or something to identify itself as a store, or the name has to include, something to make it stand out from all other NFTs on the network. And that way they could be really easily indexed. It's also property. And so you could sell your store to another person because people would follow the token, not the person who owns the token. And then in the mutable data, and this is the thing, like a store is like a thing that doesn't really change, and it's property. But the items that are listed on Craigslist, or the items that are for sale in the store, those don't need to be immutable or recorded on the blockchain. They're going to change frequently. And so that would be a really good candidate of data to put on the pay to write database, because that data is gonna slough off after a year, and it doesn't necessarily need to be recorded, but you do want it to be censorship resistant, and you do want it to have high availability, and that's what the pay to write database provides. So the store would be an NFT, and the mutable data would point to entries in the pay to write database, and those are the products. And so that's kind of the data structure that I'm really like playing with.
To not be group NFT and items to be children's of this group NFT.
Yeah, they could. That's also what I'm wrestling with. The problem is, when you sell a product, what do you do with the child NFT?
It will be there. Just you change the owner, right? You sell the item, means the NFT will go to somebody's wallet, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And if you have that works in the case where both people are technically savvy and the NFT like represents something. But I'm thinking like buying potatoes from someone down the street, or buying a couch from someone on the other side of town. Like, they don't care about NFTs. They just want to see a product, and they want to talk to the owner and pay them and and take the product away. That's what held me back from like the getting too deep down the NFT rabbit hole and representing things as children.
They will not see the NFT itself because they will see the front end, right? How you represent this NFT to them, how it's going on the back end. It's not their business. In fact, they buy the item, they see you on some application. So they will see the mutable data, maybe in this case, like a media attached to this, price, stuff like this one. But how to see, this is the NFT. They don't need to know even this.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
When they create account, it will create like wallet for them, or I don't know how exactly. So they will get this NFT, so they receive their item, and it will show to them.
Yeah, in that case, the NFT could act like a receipt, proof of purchase. Yeah, I like that. I like that idea. What I thought was really the main innovative idea here was representing a store as an NFT, so that they can be easily indexed and sold as property.
Right.
And then because it's like, it's computationally efficient, right? Because when a user goes to Craigslist.com or whatever this new website would be, really behind that's going to be a REST API that's going to index all the stores, and those stores are going to have metadata like the types of products that they carry. And so it's very fast to list the stores. You don't have to deal with the products in the stores at that point until the user like selects a store.
So you have NFT group which will be named stores, and you will create children inside which will be the stores, and all of this how to see the stores children will have some pointer in the document hash maybe to the group NFT for this representing this store.
Yeah.
So when you have a new store, you mint a new children token in the store's NFT. No, you first create a group for this store. And after this, you mint NFT in the store's group with something, hash or something, pointing to this group for the store. And you start creating item inside the group.
Yeah, so I thought about doing it that way, but somebody has to own that group token or the minting baton for the group token. And so I like a platform.
Gotcha.
And so I like the idea of doing it more as a protocol where you don't necessarily have to use website ABC to .xyz or whatever. You don't have to go to a specific website to create the token. You can do it on your own in PSF BCH wallet, but as long as you follow the rules of the protocol, everybody else on the network can see it.
Yeah, discovery is instant because it's already indexed. And no one has to know where to go to find those. How it does after that, right? It sounds like it could be done, lots of different ways. But I feel like that first one is really important. That it exists as its own thing. That everyone can create it themselves as long as it's in the right protocol. That does make sense.
So it definitely could be done the way you suggest, Stoyan. I was thinking that's how I started thinking about it.
Okay, then. The main things will be not group not group NFT, the stores. It will be wallet. What about this one? So you create something and send it to this wallet. NFT from a specific I don't know, it's specific ticker like STR something. You send it to this wallet. And when you index this wallet for NFTs, you can get the stores.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Is like representing a store as an NFT makes a lot of sense because it's property, you can buy and sell it, and also it has identity, like reputation. So if consumers have a poor, and that's another thing that could be done like separately. You wouldn't necessarily need the store's permission to write a review about the store. You just need to know the unique identity, the token ID of the store, and then the reviews can go somewhere else.
If you send your group NFT to this wallet, you cannot create children inside.
Right.
So,
Right.
Once it's there, right, you can't control it any longer.
But you can send some specific like signal something, signal NFT, which will point to your real NFT. So this it can be even not maybe NFT. I don't know.
There was a really good article that I put in our PSF chat of probably about a week ago, and it was on soulbound tokens, and they were making the argument that soulbound tokens are a really bad idea. That what you're really trying to do is make a claim, and that shouldn't be represented as a token. It can still be on chain, and so it's like. So the difference being like, yeah, if I represent something as a token and I send it to someone, they can pass it on. Whereas and if it's a soulbound token, you can't do that. That's the whole point.
Right.
But then you have this UTXO locked up that, can't be spent. And you can do the same thing by simply making a transaction and like sending a dust output to that address. And then the transaction is permanent and immutable, doesn't lock up a UTXO. And as long as the opportune has like some special thing that can be indexed, that's why I'm starting to really, I thought that was a really informative and nuanced article, because it got me thinking about, like a product, like, does a product need to be on the blockchain? Well, no, probably not. Because once it's sold, like nobody cares about it anymore. And same thing with like a review, like reviews are really important. And so you have to have identity, and identity could either be an address or a token. And there's trade-offs depending on which one you choose.
I do have something to say about products being on the blockchain as tokens. I do see a way of, say, let's just use simple things. You grow corn and I grow watermelons. I tokenize my crop, or you tokenize your crop of corn. I tokenize my watermelons. On a DEX, we can directly exchange corn for watermelons, because we can arrive at 5 watermelons equals 3 bushels of corn, and then we trade those tokens, and then those tokens are used for claim of product upon physical delivery. And then upon physical delivery, you could either burn those tokens or they could be recycled.
Yeah. So, and that's a futures market. We just described as how futures markets were created.
But the Craigslist can work the same way, because I could tokenize, like I like the idea of coffee shop, ice cream shop. Coffee shop creates coffee tokens. They're redeemable for coffee when you go in there. The ice cream shop creates ice cream tokens. They're redeemable for an ice cream cone. On this decentralized Craigslist, I could say, hey, I'd like to get some ice cream tokens. And somebody can say, I got coffee tokens to trade you. Swapped. Now, yeah,
well, see, I think that's where the DEX would really come in handy for that use case. And this is really the mental exercise, is thinking about, so Craigslist is essentially digital classified ads. That's why it looks the way it looks, and
why they killed newspapers, because so efficient.
They were very successful in going from analog to digital classified ads, and so I think what you just described, Aaron, is like a very important niche. But then there's all these other things, like selling a couch. Like you wouldn't tokenize that, like I mean, you could, but why?
Well, you could sell the couch, but here's the thing: if I go on there and I put up the couch for sale, and somebody comes and says, I'll buy the couch for 300 coffee tokens. I could go, yeah, I'll sell it for 300 coffee tokens. I just got myself 300 cups of coffee.
Yeah.
Or so this, what we're doing, I think, is the evolutionary of money. It's actually the evolution of trade, because money came about so that we didn't have to bring everything to market. And then also we could evaluate everything against one thing. But now we have the ability to evaluate everything against itself, and through tokenization, and therefore you can almost get rid of the money intermediary. That's what's kind of exciting about this for me. Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of what I'm searching for, is like a clear path towards tying a couch into the DEX. Like it's kind of there, but it's kind of a Rube Goldberg machine. Like I can't think of a way to do it that makes like really clear sense and is not a Rube Goldberg machine.
Well,
I
the couch doesn't necessarily need to be in the decks, right? The couch can be a post, and the post could be online that somebody sees. It's the offer for the couch, you know, that it is needs to, and like maybe the couch is an NFT object of the store, you know.
Yeah.
And so then the tokens are traded, and you have that, and what you have is a receipt, essentially.
Yeah. I know. And so where I'm starting to sort of draw these intellectual bright lines is sort of global markets versus local markets. Like if you have tokens representing some fungible thing, that's like a global market. But like if you have a couch or some potatoes like that you want to sell in your local geography, that's a local market. And that's where Craigslist really excels.
Yep.
And, and so like the buy now button, that's an example of a global market where you're just trying to sell tokens, and you can sell it to anybody in the world because it's digital and there's no physical counterpart to it. But then Craigslist really excels at these local markets, like selling used couches and used in produce. And so, yeah, I'm thinking something more along the lines of, we've talked about this before, of how we really want to make it easy for people to trade in rural areas, for people to economically work together in a rural area. And that's why I really respect Craigslist. I think they just did an amazing job at that.
But there's I don't know if you've seen this before, but the Poverty Inc. movie that's just put out kind of talks about how globally the problem is that people in all these places don't have access to free markets. And something like this, it doesn't mean they bring up Nigeria. They talk about how big stars are donating money to these places, and it's ruining economies in all of these places around the world. And what they actually need is access to something like you're creating that they can use locally. That's not censored, so they can actually live a life and actually build a business. And so, I think of it from that lens and not just like a local couch thing, but instead, how does the world actually do it? The problem is crypto, for the most part, has been high fees. So people, even if they wanted to, they couldn't do it. This approach allows for sub penny transactions, so I think that there is a larger context here if we're willing to spend some time thinking about that.
Yeah, excellent summary.
I agree. And that's where, like, I'm on Twitter Spaces talking to people, but in the VR world, like every night. And one of the things I'm talking about is I believe SLPs, the SLP protocol is the future of the metaverse because it is so cheap. Why would you have, as a game developer, build on Polygon or Ethereum when, 10,000 items at 20 cents a piece gets really expensive,
Yeah.
So that doesn't make any sense.
They can build on Nano because the fees are zero.
There you go.
Banana also fees zero.
Yeah, I've been looking at your repos on that, Stoyan. We'll get on Banana.
Yeah, get a lot of bananas.
But that I do make this case that SLP, it has metaverse use cases, but it also has real world use cases. It's really easy to tokenize and create tokens. And that's part of why I'm trying to get infrastructure set up over here so I can start going to my friends that run businesses and say, hey, it's really easy to do this. The other Aaron of the Council of Aarons, I'm coining it now, the Council of Aarons.
Love it.
He's, working on a payment module. And so we got a payment module now that, it's easy to say, okay, we got this here. It can start integrating stuff like this. It's very exciting to see this happen. And now with what you're talking about with NFTs, and you've got a website where you can view these NFTs. We got the IPFS cluster coming. And then if we have a way to bring those NFTs into a WebXR browser environment, that now means that we can have persistent world building on a decentralized platform. And not only that, you have transactionary ability.
Yeah, well, Aaron, give us an update on your cluster work. How's that going?
Yeah, we've got 17 nodes up and running, and right now we're contacting people and distributing them around Omaha and around the Midwest region. And so once we get them all distributed, then we're going to start running tests, and it's literally we're going to basically write down, all right, we got 17 nodes running, and we're going to pin to all 17. And then we're going to do different file types, just a simple text file, a JPEG, a TIFF, MP4, a 360 photo, like a GLB asset. And we're going to work up to heavier and heavier assets, and then see what the time resolution is on those sort of things. And then we're going to start cutting it down to see if there's what is that? I'm blanking on
The latency?
when you put more into it and you get less out. Point of diminishing returns.
Oh, okay.
Right, for pinning in a local area. Like maybe there is, maybe 10 pins is a point of diminishing returns, and so we don't need to be sitting here going, we're going to pin you to 25 machines. So that's on that side of things. We're the solution for I want to use the mutable token as a solution for dynamic DNS, because we have this issue where we got to use duck DNS. And if you don't pay, you can only get 5 of them. So Adams went and set up like 4 or 5 different Gmail accounts so he can get multiple DNSs so that we can SSH into these machines and service them, from anywhere around. And then the other problem is bootstrapping. So if we put out the service JSON, for those that don't know, when you do initiate a cluster follow node, you put in a CID, and it goes through your local IPFS gateway, grabs that CID, and then reads that as the service JSON to join the cluster. It's got the cluster secret, it's got high water, low water marks, and it's got the peers that you're going to bootstrap to, and then it's got the trusted peers that you listen to for pinning. So when those IPs change, like we're having an issue with, that means that the cluster follow is not going to work. So what we want to do is figure out a decentralized way of dealing with that dynamic DNS, and the solution is mutable tokens. So I've got to sit down and go through. We create the mutable tokens, but essentially how duck DNS works is you have a cron job that's constantly querying what's my IP like every 5 minutes, and when it changes, it sends that out to the duck DNS server, and then so you can redirect. So we want to do the same thing, but instead of sending it to a duck DNS server, you write a transaction in an MDA wallet, and it updates the token.
Yeah.
So, and then the IPFS hash would look at that token address, that wallet address, like you've done with the website stuff already, and then it would pull in that multi-address and use that as the bootstrap. So that's coming as well. So
that same use case I'm integrating right now into the pay to write database. So this is a heads up. One of the ways that the pay to write database is about to change. We call this a hard fork. We're hard forking from V2 to V3. And the main difference is that in V2, to write to the database is like 0.01 PSF tokens. So it's not taking into consideration the fiat price of PSF tokens, just native. And so that was a convenient way to get it going, but we need to actually know, I don't know, the PSF token should increase in value, and it's, everybody tends to think of that in fiat terms. So I'm creating a token that I can update whenever or actually this will eventually be passed on to the minting council. So the minting council will have access to update the mutable data of one specific token that tracks the value of PSF tokens in dollars. And so that way, when you make a write to the database, it'll look up what that price is, and it'll cost 1 cent, 1 penny per write. And it'll calculate what that is in PSF tokens. And
so I do have a question. Like, pay to write database, is it only accessible through the nodes that are on the private network?
No, anybody who runs an instance of the pay to write database it sets up a REST API, and so you can talk. And that's what p2wdb.fullstack.cache
Okay.
is it's just a REST API. And so if you use the p2wdb JavaScript library that's on npm right now, it's calling that URL. So it's not using the Web3 or IPFS at all. It's just using the normal Web2 REST API type client server workflow.
Yeah.
But anybody who runs a local copy of the PagerDuty database has both the Web2 REST API and then the Web3 IPFS side of stuff.
So it's a OrbitDB database, correct?
Mm-hmm.
So is it still using CIDs or to catalog all the information?
Yeah. So OrbitDB CIDs start with the letter Z.
Okay.
But
So
other than that, everything's the same.
we could essentially write to the PagerDuty database because this is a temporary thing. We don't need it to stay forever. That makes a lot of sense. Because if we're dynamically changing, we don't need to write this and pin this every time to recursively across a bunch of machines, you know.
Yeah, it's a trade-off. You know, it's probably in your use case, it's probably better to update the mutable data. It's probably cheaper and makes more sense. What the PagerDuty database is really good is it's basically a cluster because everybody who runs an instance of the PagerDuty database helps to share the data on the network, and so it is essentially a cluster.
So the thing with the IPFS consumer and service provider, they're running on a private network, which means that you're not able to go out to IPFS, which is why I'm going to try to see if I can set up another Docker instance running a cluster, you know, so we'll see if the ports collide or not, or if I can change the ports a little bit for that. So if I'm somebody's connecting to that, they're connecting over like Web 2, right?
Yeah.
Because they're not connecting through IPFS to that.
Yeah, it's the same idea as like an IPFS gateway, essentially.
All right. So this is something I was thinking about, and Stoy and I were talking about, like running a cluster and running the service at the same time. What would be the advantage? And this is maybe one advantage that I could see, but you know, right now I'm saying they're kind of two separate things because both are using port 5001 to communicate to the IPFS node. Both are using 4001 to communicate to the network. The PagerDuty database one is a private network, therefore it does not communicate with other IPFS nodes, which kind of eliminates what we're trying to do with the cluster, where we want people to have access to the data, but the cluster acts like a circuit relay. So there is potential there for some of the cluster nodes to also run IPFS wallet consumer and other cluster nodes to not run, giving a back end door workaround to access the wallet consumer through the cluster.
Yeah. Well, so there's a few options there. There's, I mean, when I moved us to a private network, that was like an act of desperation because, you know, I just couldn't figure out where these bandwidth issues were coming from. And it turned out that they were mostly coming from the improper use of OrbitDB. And I fixed that problem is now fixed.
Okay.
And so we could move everything back over to the public network.
Really?
Yeah. And so it'd be kind of a deal. And the more time goes on that we don't do that, the bigger of a deal it's going to be. And
oh man, if you did that, then each of those nodes could run a cluster and this at the same time. And serve two purposes.
I mean, the other thing is you can just change the ports. Everything's configurable. It just, you know, there's a couple extra steps you need to, you know about, but it needs to be documented. But
I could definitely change the ports too and make that work. The biggest thing is like when you put that swarm key in the config file, that you're not talking to the rest of IPFS. Right. So, but if we didn't have to do that, you could run a BCH wallet consumer and a cluster node at the same time and have all this functionality of people being able to do transactions. Say you're a business, you could write stuff to the pay to write database, then you could pin it to the cluster if you wanted to later on. You know, you would have all this functionality that goes into that.
Yeah. So,
Chris, we're trying to figure what is the MongoDB doing in the consumer. You're mentioning that you're using OrbitDB for most of the stuff. So we was thinking, okay, why is the MongoDB there?
the main reason why Mongo's there is that it's legacy, because there's like a legacy of software here where the very first repo that everything started from is this Koa API boilerplate that I have in my personal GitHub repo, and that uses Mongo because that's set up. That's a boilerplate for creating a REST API that has like user authentication, and so the Mongo database is there to track the users and information about the users. And then that got forked into IPFS Service Provider, which added on all the IPFS stuff and all the Web3 stuff and the JSON RPC. And again, like you can still use that to create like a user database and have like users where you have to sign in and authenticate, and then you can display stuff to users and stuff to non-users. And so it's handy for that reason. But even though it's maybe not necessarily doing anything. So like, for example, in IPFS BCH wallet consumer, it's not doing anything. It's just there. It's like this extra container that's just hanging out. And it's just really not doing anything. But it could, if you wanted to add additional functionality. In the case of like the pay to write database, that's also forked from IPFS Service Provider. And in that case, MongoDB is used as a local cache. Because every time you start the app, it's going to go through the entire database and try and revalidate everything against the blockchain. That's its default behavior. And so if you have already validated an entry in the database, it'll just do a quick lookup on MongoDB. And so that way, when you start the pay to write database, it'll quickly validate everything in the Mongo database or against the Mongo database. And then anything new that it has never seen before, it'll just focus on that in terms of going out to the blockchain and validating it, which is an expensive thing.
And that's how the SLP indexer works too, correct? With the Mongo database in there?
Yeah, because the PSF SLP indexer primarily uses LevelDB. And I can't remember if it has a MongoDB or not, and if it does, how it uses it.
It does. And
okay.
In the README, it's you're supposed to run the install script. So
yeah, and then there is a Docker container that includes the Mongo as well associated with it. I don't know what it does too.
That might be another like hanger outer. It might not even do anything.
Hanger outer.
Is there some way like to put some flags, or I don't know, so like don't use MongoDB? For example, if I running this consumer, I just put some flag and there will be no need from container. Is it doable?
It's totally doable. It just needs to be coded that way. Yeah. You know, it's like, that's why it's a lot of effort to take it out, and it's a lot of effort to put it back in. and so it's like, if it's there, it's not that expensive if it's just hanging out.
If I decide to code this way exactly, I need to keep this going to MongoDB in Koa code somewhere.
Well, if you wanted to make the change all the way up the tree, but the Mongo, it's its startup where it looks for that Mongo database, and so that's in like there's a bin folder, and then there's a server.js file there, and that's the file that gets run first. That's the very first file, and that's where it looks for Mongo and will freak out if it doesn't find it. So if you just sort of comment that out, and there's no other code that interacts with Mongo, then you're good to go.
Oh, it's not hard.
Yeah,
it's not hard. Okay, we'll have this until Friday. It's 2 days for you, Aaron.
2 days for me.
Walking.
We'll see if I get on it.
It's your homework.
I got to get the IPFS service provider up and running. So
cool. I'm
working on that right now.
I want to shout out to Crazy Money and Bitcoin Bay for watching so far. Crazy Money says, "Hoorah, PSF!" That's it. And Bitcoin Bay, I said the op return data. This was associated with way back when we were talking about the Craigslist thing. Op return data would need to a decent and generally, ideally, general indexer, kind of like the SLP indexer, to be able to do that. So yeah, I'm glad there guys are watching.
There was Bit DB before, but I don't think it's already available.
Well, so BitDB is what SLPDB was built on, was forked from, and so that was the original SLP indexer. And
but it was indexing exactly these op returns.
Yeah, that's what it does. It looks for a lowcat ID, and everything that, and then PSF SLP indexer does the same thing. So that's one of the other ideas that I was playing with is, well, instead of representing a store as a token, we could actually create, we could basically fork the SLP indexer and make a whole indexer just for stores, just for blockchain based stores and products. But it's like, is there a good reason to do that?
Yeah, I like what you have right now, because it's already, as long as it's a token, it already indexes the op return. I mean, the data's there, right?
Yeah. I mean, the main guidelines I'm trying to follow is make it a protocol so that if no one uses the software we build, there's still, just like SLP. It was great having SLPDB to refer to, especially when it was still running, when I built the indexer. But theoretically, someone could just take the SLP spec and write an indexer from scratch, just based on the spec. That's what I did with Swap. Or with the DEX, is Vin Armani created a swap protocol, and he created his own software around that, but I didn't use his software. I just followed the protocol, and created a completely different implementation. And our two software, even though we're using the same protocol, we're not compatible with one another, because there's a few details that we decided to implement differently, but the potential is there.
Nice.
And so that's what I'd like to see applied to something like Craigslist, where it's just it's on the block, how you can't censor it. There's no way.
Right. And it's easy to look up because of how it's written. So the protocol is correct. I think the way you've defined it is the right way to do it. And it feels like this is something that actually can be global and uncensorable because of the way you're planning it.
Cool.
Yeah, I think it was interesting case with the Uniswap. If you remember, they trying to sue them, but these guys, they just put the contracts on the blockchain and everybody can run a front end.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they don't own anything in general. So we don't run this site or something. It's some contract on the blockchain which everybody is using from their front end.
Mm-hmm. But
so there is Uniswap URL, but it's free. You're free to start your own front end.
And that's the part right there, is everyone's free to create their own. If they create a better one that works with it, well, fantastic. Yeah. And if they decide to fork it and create another one that's better, well, it all works together. That's the real network effect.
Yeah, where that's fallen apart though is that the Ethereum ecosystem has become so dependent on MetaMask and Infura that they don't even like what you guys have said. That's great in theory, but when Uniswap actually delisted tokens from their front end after getting served a subpoena by the SEC, the liquidity on those tokens went way down, because all of a sudden most of the retail market couldn't even see them, because all they know is these centralized channels. And so that's why that's where I think the PSF is different. Is our economic model is if we focus primarily on software that you run on your own computer, and then secondarily make convenience, make it more convenient. Just that culture, if we maintain that cultural approach to software, then that sort of solves the problem I just described, where there will be more people more inclined to run the software on their own computer and not even use, just use the convenience method for just that, because it's convenient.
Well, we're moving to a peer-to-peer world, and last night there's a guy that he's developing Linux to run on a headset natively, Oculus Quest. And he was asking me a question about the IPFS cluster, and I was saying, yeah, we have it running on 32-bit machines, we have it running on Windows, we have it running on Linux, we have it running on Mac, iOS is next. And so what this means is that every edge device that's out there can be a serving up data in a peer-to-peer type of decentralized network. And this is kind of where things are headed, or they can serve up data. You could access something through your smart toaster if really need
Raspberry
be.
Pi, yeah.
You know, like it. Oh, by the way, I did comment that out and it works. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, it's running right now. I'm just getting air connected to the node because I don't have the Swarm key in there, but the program started up. So
nice.
But yeah, like it's weird to me because being in the environment we're in, we like always think decentralized, like, yeah, that just makes sense. And then I'm talking to these people and they're like, oh, you got to have these giant servers. And I'm like, well, no, where I think things are headed is you're going to see like Facebook will be the first one where they start to move to a more peer-to-peer architecture, because if they can encrypt the data with like fully homomorphic encryption, then which means that you can compute on that data without decrypting it. So it can be used in all their applications, everything like that. They can still have their data. They can still sell it, whatever they want to do. But if they move to a peer-to-peer where it's like they offload the cost of storage and servers to the users, they make more money, you know?
Yeah. The way that we are able to distribute our infrastructure costs among community and then align incentives with the token is like, nobody's talking about like we're way past the curve here. Like this has been my frustration talking with the Shapeshift engineers, because some of them understand what I'm saying. And they're building their system almost exactly the same architecturally as we built the system in Bitcoin.com, which went down in flames. And and I pointed this out to them several months ago, and they're slowly trying, like their mentality is we're going to decentralize this, but their architecture is preventing them from actually doing that. And so I've been just like, all we can do is what we're doing here and show people, be the change that you want to see, and show people like, no, this is a better architecture.
It's funny because like I'll get people like, DAOs don't work, they're horrible. And like my one comment is like, okay, they're very new and we don't know exactly what they will be. Also, I'm a part of a DAO that functions pretty well, There somebody last night, they're like,
so now we just got to make record profits.
Yeah. So I mean, this is what's being formed is great. And like Aaron needed something, paid for it, it happened. So this is we're solving a lot of issues here and getting things to the point to where I feel comfortable on the ground with, like, because we got things in the software area. Now we need to engage people on a local level, And so once we have this stuff ready to go, like a decentralized Craigslist, the DEX is there. And then my focus is on like, all right, let's make this more usable. And then let's go to the local business and say, hey, how would you like to not have to pay 4% fees on your Visa, and it's really easy. It's not that complicated, It's a lot less complicated than what you're doing. So it's going to take time, but it's also going to take getting in the trenches with people. And
well, on that note, let's go ahead and wrap this up, and I'll close out with this thought. There's a book I've been reading called The Cold Start Problem. It's on Amazon, it's on Audible. And the first like third of the book is like the other 2/3 are too advanced and like beyond my scope, but it's all about network effects and how do you bootstrap network effects. It's called the cold start problem. I would love it if we sort of collectively read that and discussed it, because it's very salient to just everything we're talking about. And in particular with this Craigslist idea, that's why I've really been studying the simplicity of the UX on Craigslist and just thinking like, what is the bare minimum that we could do to replicate this experience? Because it talks about that in the cold start problem of like, you start very small, very exclusive, and very simple. And so anyways, that's kind of the lens I'm trying to look through a lot of these things that involve network effects.
That's great. Wow. I'll read that. I mean, I think that's one thing that would be, looks like he's already downloaded it. I think the other one interesting side of that is like Ben Armani actually put something on Medium recently about using a wallet as a product. And so this idea of like building a front end that anyone can stand up, like say, for example, anyone builds a front end that can talk to this protocol, right, what you're building, but they can also make money doing it, can make so that everybody is incentivized to actually stand up something that goes against the protocol you're writing. And so then now once you got 5, 10, 15, 20, 100 of these things, the individual is incentivized to create it and use the protocol. So I feel like there's a lot there that can start to do it, and people could be incentivized to actually do something for it to make it grow.
Yeah. All right, guys, well, let's go ahead and wrap this up. I'm just going to shut down the Zoom meeting because I got to get to work. I'm trying to sell my place and there's a lot to do.
Where are you moving?
Down the street.
I was like, he's leaving the island.
In the barn. He's leaving to the barn. So
yeah, this is probably the last time I'll have this background. I'm probably going to be broadcasting from a boat. I'll have my land yacht and I'll have my sea yacht. Hopefully, fingers crossed, if I sell this place, I'll be broadcasting from a boat. So.
Nice. All right. We'll see you guys later, Stern. I'll see you on Friday. Yeah.
Chris, just if you can for 1 minute talk, if you remember before, you told me about Teddy.cash. Is it the real thing? I went there, but there's no Teddy token or TSD, like Teddy stable coin on the Trader Joe.
Yeah, I ended up doing a pretty good trade with them. I locked up some Avalanche and it was a leverage play. I locked them up some Avalanche to get TUSD to buy more Avalanche. And then I waited for the price to rise. And then I sold it all to unwind the contract and get and I ended up getting some extra Avalanche out of the deal. And but then I haven't touched them since, and they were already on the decline at that point. So I don't know where it's at right now. Cause that TUSD, I really struggled to find a DEX where I could sell my TUSD back for Avalanche. Okay. And ask in their Telegram channel. That's the best place to get advice. There's a few devs who still really care about it, but that project just really hasn't performed.
It seems like close to that. That's why I wanted to ask you. You told me before about it. So so if you're not in it yet, I can't recommend getting into it. Okay. All right, cheers guys. Thanks for attending.